These schools would upload a student's name to the federal database, claiming they did 160 hours of training. In reality, the student showed up on Friday, paid $1,500 in cash, and the school uploaded their name on Saturday. By Sunday, that student was eligible to take their CDL road test. By shutting down the schools, the administration is forcing the industry to prioritize quality over quantity. Secretary Duffy was quoted saying, "This administration is cracking down on every link in the illegal trucking chain. Bad actors were able to game the system and let unqualified drivers flood our roadways." Well, that ends today. I talked about CDL Mills on one of my videos. You know, the schools where a guy pays $500 cash, skips the training, and walks out with a CDL in his hand without ever backing the trailer. We've complained about it at truck stops. We've watched these unqualified drivers flood the market, crash rates, and drive up our insurance premiums. And for years, it felt like the FMCSA was just rubber stamping these places. Well, that all ends right now. In a massive overnight move, the Trump administration and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy just purged nearly 3,000 CDL training providers from the Federal Registry. They didn't just fine them. They didn't just warn them. They deleted them. And they aren't done. Another 4,500 are on notice. On this video, I'm going to break down this massive purge, why the government is finally cutting the head of the snake, and why this specific move is the biggest guarantee that the trucking reset is going to drive rates up for professionals who survive. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Marcellus with Trucking with MBR. And if you've been watching my recent videos, you know I've been tracking the supply side spark. We talked about the 82 drivers detained by ICE in Alabama. We talked about the Morgan Stanley report predicting a capacity shortage. But this news, this is the root cause. You can arrest illegal drivers all day long, but if the schools are still pumping out fake CDLs, the problem never stops. Secretary Sean Duffy just took a sledgehammer to that system. Let's look at the numbers because they are staggering. The FMCSA manages something called the Training Provider Registry, the TPR. If you want to train new drivers, you have to be on that list. The administration reviewed the list and found out that thousands of these schools, they were completely bogus. They weren't teaching safety. They weren't following the curriculum. They were just printing certificates. So they removed nearly 3,000 of them immediately. Secretary Duffy was quoted saying, "This administration is cracking down on every link in the illegal trucking chain. Bad actors were able to game the system and let unqualified drivers flood our roadways." Well, that ends today. This is a direct attack on the churn and burn model of the trucking industry. Think about what this does to the supply of new drivers. For the last 3 years, we have had a flood of new entrants. Why? Because it was too easy to get in. If you remove 3,000 entry points, 3,000 places where someone could easily get a CDL, you are putting a massive cork in the bottle. This connects directly to the Morgan Stanley prediction we talked about. They predicted a 5% drop in capacity, but when you make it harder for new drivers to replace the ones leaving, that drop happens faster. This is basic economics. If you are a legitimate CDL school doing things the right way, this is great news. You don't have to compete with the guy down the street selling licenses for cash. And if you are an owner-operator, this is the best news you could get. Why? Because CDL Mills don't produce owner-operators. They produce steering wheel holders who work for pennies. These are the drivers who end up in those mega fleets or sketchy fly-by-night carriers that undercut rates. They're the ones who don't know how to calculate their cost per mile. They're the ones who drag the whole market down. By shutting down the schools, the administration is forcing the industry to prioritize quality over quantity. I want to pause here and explain how these schools were getting away with it, because it exposes just how broken the system was. Under the old rules, the Training Provider Registry was basically an honor system. You filled out a form online, you promised you had a facility, and you were approved. Nobody went to inspect the school. Nobody checked if they actually owned trucks. There were cases where the school address was a UPS store mailbox. There were cases where the training yard was an abandoned parking lot that didn't even have cones. These schools would upload a student's name to the federal database claiming they did 160 hours of training. In reality, the student showed up on Friday, paid $1,500 in cash, and the school uploaded their name on Saturday. By Sunday, that student was eligible to take their CDL road test. This created a pipeline of drivers who didn't know how to shift, didn't know how to do a pre-trip, and definitely didn't know the rules of the road. When Secretary Duffy says they purged 3,000 providers, he means they looked at the data and realized these places were frauds. This stops the flow of fake drivers immediately. You can't just open a new school tomorrow under a new name anymore. The scrutiny is too high right now. And here's the scary part for the bad actors. They aren't stopping at 3,000. The report says another 4,500 providers have been placed on notice of proposed removal. That means the FMCSA is looking at them and saying, prove you are legitimate or you are going in 30 days. If those 4,500 get wiped out too, we are looking at a fundamental restructuring of how drivers enter this industry. We're going back to a time where a CDL actually meant something, where it was a skilled trade that required real training and real investment. Now, I want to address the flip side. Some people are going to say, but we have a driver shortage. We need more schools, not fewer. I have said it before, and I will say it again. We do not have a driver shortage. We have a pay shortage and a retention shortage. Flooding the market with poorly trained drivers doesn't fix the shortage. It just keeps rates low so shippers don't have to pay us what we are worth. Cleaning up this registry forces shippers to value the drivers they have. It forces carriers to pay better to keep the drivers that they have. This is the reset in action. So what does 2026 look like with 3,000 fewer CDL schools? It looks like a market with a higher barrier to entry. It means that if a broker wants their loads moved, they can't just rely on a fresh batch of rookies coming out of a mill in Illinois or Florida. They have to call a professional. They have to call you. I want you to watch this space closely. When the government starts cutting off the supply of drivers at the source, the effects takes about 6 to 12 months to really hit the market. That aligns perfectly with the timeline for the rate recovery we've been predicting. So if you are struggling right now, if you are tired of the low rates, just look at the scoreboard. ICE is detaining illegal drivers. The courts are debating non-domicile CDLs. And now the DOT is shutting down the fake schools. The board is being cleared. So your job is to survive the reset and position yourself for the upturn. You need to be building relationships with shippers now, not when the rates spike. You need to be looking into dedicated lanes. If you are trying to get into the final mile game, which is one of the most stable sectors out there, you need to grab my final mile contract plug pack. I put together the list of companies in your area that are actually hiring and looking for contractors. Stop searching Google and wasting time. The link is in the description below. I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you seen these CDL mills in your area? Do you think shutting them down will actually fix the rate problem? Let's talk about it. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next video. Also, check out the next video on the screen below where I talk about working with Amazon Relay. I talk about how Amazon really seems like it's just another gig app and how you should just use it as a fill-in in between loads. Now, once again, I'm Marcellus with Trucking with MBR. Keep it safe, keep it legal, and I'll see you on the next video.